Well, on Thursdays, our guest is, you've got it, Dr. E. Christian Kopff, University of Colorado. Very, very bright guy. More importantly, in many ways, a very witty guy. So we have him on the program every Thursday. He's an author, a lecturer, and, of course, he teaches classics and honor students at the University of Colorado in Boulder. Stay tuned, folks.
It's time for the Newsmaker Show on News Talk AM 1480 WLEA. Here's Kevin Torres.
Well, you know, I've got another guest in Boulder that I've had on the show quite a bit lately. I'm going to have her again next week. This is the gal who's the expert on body language. I think I mentioned that to you once, Chris.
Yeah, you did mention it. Yeah, that's right.
And the next time I have her on, I'm just going to start throwing out names.
Okay.
And ask her, what did the body language of so-and-so tell you? By the way, this may interest you. In 2001, when George Bush took office, she was still in college, right where you are.
Okay.
And she had not become an expert on body language yet. Now she's written a couple books, and she lectures all over the country. But she said a friend of hers who already had taken all the courses said to her, and had been out lecturing on it, said when George Bush took office, he showed all over in his body language, we're going to war. And of course, yeah, and of course we know now, we didn't know then, that he came into office with the idea of attacking Iraq. And that was a big number for the neocons and for Ariel Sharon in Israel. And Bush was very much under their influence. I think he regretted it later on, don't you?
Yes, he later admitted it, but at the time he was selling himself as the reasonable choice.
Yeah.
And it was going to be Gore who was going to get us involved in things, because Clinton had not led us into a war, but he'd intervened in a number of areas around the world. It was thought that Gore was going to continue that.
Mm-hmm. But you know, as anyone...
It turned out to be the opposite. It was Bush who wanted to get us into wars.
Yeah. Yeah. The minute they say, I'm going to keep you out of war, brace yourself.
Well, no, that's Mr. Wilson and Mr. Roosevelt, both. And Teddy Roosevelt, who was always rampaging, never got us into a war.
Isn't it funny? He always wanted to go to war, but, well, the Spanish-American War, he had a lot to do with that.
He actually charged up a hill with people shooting at him. I think that somewhat modifies your view about war.
And what was it Churchill said? There's something about a bullet whizzing by your brain that can concentrate your mind very... Something like that.
Absolutely. No, Churchill was somebody who did like war.
Oh, yes, he
true.
did. Yeah.
He managed to do both. He liked it, and he got his country involved in two wars.
Yeah. He also, in the beginning of World War I, he wanted to get right into it. He was, of course, they did get into it, but he was all for it. And a cabinet member wrote in his diary, Winston has his war paint on.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the indication was that as the war was, everyone in the British cabinet was very depressed because the war was beginning and the lights are going out all over Europe, said Sir Edward Grey. And Churchill was jumping up and down. He could hardly control how excited he was that there was going to be a war.
Well, he would have loved... well, he probably did love World War II. That was his highest moment.
Well, that was what made him, yes. He'd been predicting World War II since about 1934.
Yeah. Well, listen, let's talk a little bit, as long as you're in Europe here with our thoughts. First of all, we should explain, or you should explain rather, what is the European Union? It seems to be going on the rocks, and I add to that the Latin phrase Deo gratias, and let's hope we never make the same mistake, but I'm sure we will, of trying to put all these countries together. In fact, George Bush was doing that. Canada, the United States, and Mexico, one big country. No thanks, not interested in that. But in Europe they did, and now they're somewhat disenchanted, aren't they?
Yes, they are. There are two issues. One was the negative one of if we're all part of one economic pact, we won't go to war, so there was that negative. And there was also the positive one that if they created a market as large as the United States, then they would equal the United States because they attribute a lot of our prosperity to our consumerism and in fact, we buy so much stuff. Well, it's beginning to sink in that there's a difference between the United States and the different European countries, and people who are questioning the European Union and its effect are doing quite well. There were elections for the European Cabinet, the European Parliament, and they don't have very much power, but it does represent. You're allowed to make a protest vote that doesn't affect your own country. And we're seeing parties. The National Front in France has been an anti-European Union and anti-immigration party now for about a generation. And they slowly grew into the teens as far as getting percentage of the vote. Well, this time, they were the number one party in France. They got 26% of the vote. The socialists who run the country sank all the way down to the teens. They're in danger of sinking out of sight. It was a devastating repudiation of the socialists, and it was a great victory for the head of the National Front, Marine Le Pen, who's this very brilliant and attractive and articulate woman. You want to practice your French, get on YouTube and see her statements. They're really well done. Meanwhile, but see, the National Front has been around now for about 30 years, on and off, maybe a little bit longer. In England, the similar party, the United Kingdom Independence Party, or UKIP, has only been around a number of years. And they also got about a third of the vote for the European Union. They again have a very articulate leader named Farage, who just really, very witty, very clear about the fact that England should trade, but they shouldn't be part of a massive, large governmental body which can overrule the will of the British people. And so it's really quite... people knew that there was going to be a protest vote. Nobody quite saw that these two parties were going to get to the top of the voting in, two major countries, France and England.
Well, one of the complaints that the Europeans... I'm glad they're finally waking up. One of their complaints is that they're being governed by not their own governments, but by bureaucrats in Brussels. That's where the European Union is headquartered.
And not even the European Parliament, but by the bureaucrats in Brussels. And these bureaucrats make rules about manufacturing, about growing things. They intervene in the economic and political life. They make immigration very easy. Once you're inside, if you're a member of the European Union, you go everywhere without even showing a passport. We Americans still have to show our passports. And the result is that people are flooding out of the less successful countries and the more successful ones, and even worse, people from Africa and the Near East flooding into southern Europe. Then once they're in Europe, they can go all the way to France and England.
Right.
So they're having a terrible problem there. It's one of the reasons why workers increasingly vote for the National Front in France, because they're the only party that wants to protect the jobs of the workers from immigrants. And the Communist Party has imploded in France, and the Socialist Party is now on the verge of doing the same because they don't support their own people.
Mm-hmm. The Parliament, by the way, the European Parliament is 751 people. Now what? That's just, you know what that is? That's a chance to pay off these guys with a nice job in Brussels. That's what that is. I mean,
yes, it is.
They have no real power. Yeah.
The funny thing is Farage, the head of the UKIP party, the United Kingdom Independence Party, he's been the only guy from his party there for years now, since 1999. And he sort of stands up every once in a while. Everyone makes fun of him because he's a Eurosceptic, but he makes a very nice living. From being a member of the European Parliament. Yeah. Well, now he's going to have friends.
Yeah.
They can actually stand up and do something and vote something and have an effect on what's going on. It is kind of a joke, and because it's so large and so ineffective, that's how the bureaucrats, of course, took over.
Now, how does that apply to us in the good old U.S. of A.?
Well, in one sense, we are the United States of Europe in the sense that we're a continent-wide nation with states that are the size of many European countries and even bigger than most European countries, frankly. But the problem is our legislature going to resume effectiveness? Because one reason why the bureaucracy is taking over is precisely because our legislative body has been stymied, and so the bureaucrats use this as an excuse, as they have in the European Union, to start making rules and start making decisions that affect our lives.
Well, we've seen that for a long time in this country, where the bureaucrats are running it.
World War II.
What's that?
It's been growing since World War II, step by step by step. Yes.
And
now it's virtually the norm. It's virtually the norm. Is that the IRS decides things, the Veterans Administration decides things, the FBI decides who they're going to investigate.
Well, now, let me ask you a question. If somebody ran, it won't be a Democrat, it would have to be a Republican, on abolishing the IRS, he better be totally clean, for one thing, because they'll come after him. They've done that over the years. Anyone speaking out against them,
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, they are completely vindictive. They are a rogue agency.
I'm not agreeing with this. If there's any IRS agents listening, he's saying it. Joe Janaki out in Colorado is saying it, not me. But listen, let me ask you this, Chris. If a Republican ran, and again, it would have to be a Republican, because Democrats are for bigger and bigger government. Republicans aren't a lot better, but at least it would have to be a Republican. If he ran for president saying, I'm going to abolish the IRS, would that be a big vote getter?
Well, I think it would be a big vote getter. As you say, the bureaucracy would defend itself, but it would be a big vote getter. Well, one of the cleverest things that Herman Cain did was suggest just that the taxes be divided into three groups, of which the income tax would only be a third. Now, that wasn't abolishing the IRS. That was substantially reducing its importance. And have two other kinds of taxes, including sales taxes. And of course, I'm in favor of a tariff. That is foreigners pay in order to participate in our economy. And that's what we had in this country from the founding all the way through the First World War. But the IRS will certainly try and defend itself because it's a terrific job. You get great parties. You get to go to Las Vegas and hot tubs and it's a really great lifestyle. They don't pay taxes. Government workers in last year underpaid their taxes by $3.3 billion.
Yeah. Well, they know who the guy sitting next to them is going to audit them. So what are they worried about, right?
That's exactly. What do they have to worry about? No one's going to go after Lois Lerner. She goes after us.
Yeah, that's right. Now we're going to take a break. When we get back with Dr. Kopff, there is a study out now that says men and women graduating from college, in addition to having enormous debts, are more likely to stay together for the duration of the marriage. That's kind of a novel idea. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Dr. E. Christian Kopff, University of Colorado in Boulder. I like to say Boulder.
I'm impressed by it.
Yeah, you're easily impressed. All right, now listen. What's this study about college couples staying married at a greater rate than other folks?
Well, a professor at the University of Minnesota Law School, June Carbone, has written a book called Marriage Markets, in which she talks about how the economic situation has changed in this country so that it's true that people get out of college owing money. So people get out of college marry later. They marry in their late 20s after they've gotten through, whatever postgraduate education or founded their business or worked toward paying off their debts. And so actually Mark Zuckerberg, who got married when he was 28 to a woman 27 who just graduated from med school, is rather typical of what happens. But once they get married, they stay together. They're loyal. Whereas, and there are a number of reasons for this. At the bottom, on the other hand, we're seeing this massive growth in illegitimacy and single-parent, quotes, families, end quotes, among poor people. And we've seen this in different groups, but even in general, the poorer part of America is very unstable. Most of the women have multiple partners. They have babies without being married, on and on and on. In the middle is the shrinking middle class, which is aiming at the goal of the college educated and the better off, but is being dragged down into the plight of the poor. And that's one thing the book is about, is what's going to happen. We're still kept stable by this middle group, which maybe has high school degree and a few years of college, but hasn't graduated from an A school and isn't going on to an excellent job in law or medicine or science or Wall Street. And what happens when the country splits in two between a relatively small group of 10 or 15% who are college-educated, well-off. They marry late because they got to pay off their debts, but when they do, they stay married. And between people on the bottom who do not have regular jobs, who do not get married, who have children are born outside of wedlock, or there's massive divorce also. There tends to be a lot of divorce in the bottom. And we're seeing the economy. Also, by the way, the law works very much to encourage poorer women not to get married because that gives the fathers no rights. If you're the father of a child born out of wedlock, you've got to go through a whole lot of legal situations, which are usually too much for poor people, to establish your paternity. If you're regularly married, of course, it's established already, and there's been a lot of move toward giving fathers, legal fathers, in the case of divorce, the equal rights with the wife. And indeed, this has tended, among other things, to discourage divorce. No point in getting divorced if you can't get rid of the guy, more or less. And by the way, most divorces, 2/3 of them are initiated by the woman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the opposite of what it was when you and I were younger.
When you and I were younger,
the man who decided it was time to trade in his wife for a trophy wife. Now it's the wives who are disgusted by their loser husbands, because although, and this is a great thing, by the way, if you're a woman with a medical degree or you're making a good salary, the overwhelming majority of people earning over $100,000 a year are male. But on the other side, when you're talking under $50,000 a year, men heavily congregate on the bottom. There's no bell curve for men. There's a bell curve in salaries for women, in which there's the poor, and there's a bunch in the middle, and then there's some on top. Men, it's like dumbbells, as it were. There are the wealthiest are massively male, and the poorest are massively male, and the women are in the middle.
You ought to explain it.
A wealthy woman has a great situation. She has a lot of choice for wealthy men to marry.
Oh, yeah.
But poor women do not have a lot of. They have a lot of choice, but they're loser choices.
Listen, I've known some women. I've often used this example. If you filled Rich Stadium, which is the nearest big stadium we have, I think it holds 80 to 100,000, something like that, on a good day. And I've known women. If you put, let's say it holds 80,000, you got 79,799 guys are all good men. Now that wouldn't be easy to do, but let's say they're all good men, and there's one jerk, one loser in there. I know women, they would find that one loser. Have you ever wondered about that?
That's, in fact, the one time Dr. Freud admitted he didn't understand something. He said, "What do women want? Was wollen die Frauen?"
What did he say?
He insisted he knew everything, right? But
yeah.
Was wollen die Frauen? What do women want? Because they like these irresponsible men.
Yeah. I've known some really beautiful women when they're young. Of course, girls 16 or 17, almost all of them are pretty. But I've known some beautiful women. They could have had any guy they wanted. And they pick a jerk, a bum, a no-good. And you say, how can that be? I mean, but...
Why would you do that? Yeah, why would you do that? But, women on... But you're talking about sheer beauty, and that's absolutely true. We see it all the time. Mm-hmm. But women who are on the top of the scale are very conscious of a man's ability to be successful. Mm. And when they find a good one, they tend to stick to them. Statistically, one sees this statistically. And it's interesting. So you have two different worlds out there of women, between those who, understand that, this is an important decision, and it's silly to spend a lot of time deciding where you're going to go to college and then marry your husband on an impulse, right? Whereas a lot of women think it's really great. He's a good dancer. He looks good. All these absurd reasons, right?
Well, yeah. You're right. Absolutely right. good sense of humor, although that's very important, I think.
Well, yeah, otherwise you go out of your mind. Yeah. And by the way, men on the top also are very conscious of the woman's intelligence, of the woman's capacity, perhaps, to earn, whereas men on the bottom are, again, equally irresponsible, that care about secondary sexual characteristics that tell you nothing about somebody and don't care about intelligence and commitment and steadiness.
As one wise man said to me many years ago, when you hear someone say, I don't know what she sees in him, or conversely, the point is they see what they want to see, not what's really there. Listen, on that happy note, we have to end this week. Next week we'll talk about the disappearance, I don't want to scare you here, Prof, the disappearance of classics at some of our big universities, since that's what you teach.
Already.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that next week. Dr. E. Christian Kopff, University of Colorado in Boulder, our guest every Thursday, and if we do rerun the show on the weekend again. Thanks, Chris.
Great to talk to you. Talk to you.